Bienvenidos a todos. Vamos a comenzar en unos momentos.
Domingo, since you're here, we'll actually have you do the interpretation directions. Okay.
Okay. Do you want me to do that now or should we wait a little bit?
Let's wait about another minute as more people come in here.
All right. En unos
Give folks
momentos
one more
voy
minute.
a dar instrucciones acerca de cómo acceder a los servicios de interpretación.
Get started in just a moment here. Right. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Shalema Budi Lopez, and I'm going to be turning over to Domingo for interpretation instructions. Domingo?
Thank you, Shalem. I will provide these instructions in English first, and then I will switch to Spanish. Voy a proveer estas instrucciones primero en inglés y después en español. If you are joining from your tablet or iPad, please locate the menu in the form of 3 dots on the bottom of your screen. And from there, you can click on it and then select language interpretation, and then proceed to select English. If you are joining from your personal computer, you can locate the icon in form of a globe at the bottom of your screen. Just click on that, and from there you can select English. And if you're joining from your smartphone, similar to your tablet, you would need to locate the menu in the form of 3 dots. Click on that and then select language interpretation, and from there you can select English. I will now provide these instructions in Spanish. Si el día de hoy nos acompaña a través de su tableta o iPad, si desea acceder a los servicios de interpretación, solo necesita localizar el menú que está en forma de 3 puntos, usualmente en la parte inferior de su pantalla. De ahí puede hacer clic y seleccionar Language Interpretation o interpretación del lenguaje, y de ahí seleccionar español o Spanish. Este proceso es igual si está acompañándonos acerca de por medio de su teléfono inteligente o smartphone. Es el mismo procedimiento, el menú en forma de 3 puntos, después Language Interpretation o interpretación del lenguaje, y finalmente puede escoger ahí Spanish o español. Si nos está acompañando a través de su computadora, por favor localice el icono con forma de globo en la parte inferior, haga clic ahí y enseguida puede escoger el idioma español o Spanish. Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Domingo, and yeah, and thank you all for being here this evening. I just want to welcome you to the International Border Community Steering Committee meeting. We have a full agenda this evening that I'll walk us through really quickly to get our evening started. We're going to start with any updates from any of the government agencies that are here that have any updates to provide. Then we're going to transition to a presentation provided by the City of San Diego regarding their tree program. And then we will be able to, we have 3 people at the Air District, on the Air District staff, who will be providing an update regarding the Tijuana River Valley odor situation and the different elements that APCD is doing to monitor and address some of these issues. We'll also have a presentation from Kathy Kien on our team as well regarding AB 617 incentive funding, where there'll be an opportunity for you all to provide feedback as well. But before we get started, I just wanted to check in and see if any public agencies have any general updates that they'd like to provide at this time.
Shalom, would this be a good time to bring up the update about Rule 1200 and 1210 or the public comment period?
This would be the perfect time, Nick.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shalom. I'm just going to share briefly, just to take a minute and to note for everyone that APCD is conducting a workshop next week, a public workshop. It's going to be virtually on Zoom. It'll be Wednesday, September 25th at 10 a.m. And it's going to be discussing proposed amendments to rules 1200 and 1210, which are a couple of our toxic air contaminant rules. This is the news source review rule and the health risks public notification and risk reduction rules. And we're going to be proposing some amendments that will primarily address some comments made from CARB in a recent state audit that was conducted for APCD operations. We're going to be making some targeted amendments that will fix some issues in regards to pollutants being added to the list that are included within the rule. And so, I went ahead and sent a couple of fact sheets to the OEJ team. I believe those fact sheets might be in the materials up on the website. I know the workshop notices are up on the website in English and Spanish. I would encourage everybody to take a look at those and participate in the workshops next week if you're free and able to learn more about what those proposed amendments entail. But I just wanted to share that real quick. I know you got a busy agenda, so if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I just wanted to share that real quick. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. And I do see, Lauren, you put in the chat box information regarding the workshop. And then also at that link as well, folks can access the fact sheet with information as well. So thank you, Nick, for sharing that with us. Are there any other public agency announcements before we transition to our first item on our agenda? All right. Not seeing any. We're actually going to start off. Actually, oh, I see Ryan. Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, greetings, Shalem, and greetings, steering committee. My name is Ryan Michael Atencio. I'm with the California Resources Board, Office of Environmental Justice, Tribal and Border Affairs. So I just wanted to introduce myself to this table. I know I've listened into your meetings before. I'm listening in today regarding the agenda item on the Tijuana River updates, and we're just wanted to let you know that we're working with and talking to staff at the district, including Shalem and Domingo and folks, David Soderman and others, Kathleen. So just wanted to make that announcement, and looking forward to listening in and learning what I can. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Yeah, and there's certainly going to be a lot to cover this evening on that topic alone. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first agenda item, and I want to turn it over to Olivia from the city of San Diego. And Olivia, you should have access to sharing your screen if you'd like. So Olivia, take the floor.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shalom. Let me just share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Perfect. Well, thank you. My name is Olivia Maybe. I am the Community Engagement Specialist with the Urban Forestry Program, here to talk to you about our Trees for Communities program. So first, a little bit about urban forestry. Our goal is to plant, maintain, and protect and promote trees within the city of San Diego. We have over 250,000 street trees and approximately 600,000 park trees. We prune palms and shade trees. We prune about 50,000 a year. In fiscal year 23, we planted 1,200 park and street trees. We respond to, on average, 6,000 get it done requests a year. That's usually emergency requests if a tree has fallen or if somebody would like a tree to be evaluated by an arborist. And those are mostly the emergency tree pruning and removals for public safety. So as you all know, there's a lot of benefits of trees. Trees create more livable communities. It's what makes for walkable neighborhoods. Trees create shade and cool off the community. It improves business activity. There's many air quality and ecosystem benefits, like reducing the air pollution levels, and also climate mitigation benefits with stormwater runoff and carbon storage and sequestration. So now about the Trees for Communities project. In 2022, there was a settlement with the Air Pollution Control District to create a supplemental environmental project. It is a $4.6 million project that is running for 5 years. And the goal of this project is to plant new trees, expand existing, and create new tree wells. And per the agreement, we are to exhaust all feasible planting locations. So we are currently wrapping up in priority area 1, and we're scheduled to start planting in San Ysidro around November. So where we are now, we have planted 816 trees in priority area 1. And there's more on the way in priority area 1. We've identified additional spots, and we're also going to be creating new tree wells in priority area 1. These trees have been watered over 9,000 times, and we have started marking out in San Ysidro for potential tree locations. And so far, we've identified 110 locations. So what to expect with this program? The city will plant new trees on city-owned land. We're going to water those trees for 3 years and provide ongoing maintenance. We will create the new planting spaces in previously paved parkways and increase planting spaces width when needed. This here is a graphic of the traditional right-of-way. Now in San Ysidro, you don't see this as much, but there is the planting strip right here next to the sidewalk. And in San Ysidro, the right-of-way will extend 10 feet into the front lawn, which will bring us to some of our challenges. So planting locations are challenging in San Ysidro, so we are taking community feedback. And from the feedback that we have received in other meetings and when we first presented, we have been visiting those locations and evaluating them for potential planting spots. So there's also the opportunity for residents to meaningfully shape the outcomes of this project. So we are going to be asking residents to opt in to planting trees in their front yard. So you can see this is an example of a right-of-way in San Ysidro, and a tree could potentially go within this area of the front lawn. So to get residents to opt in, we're going to be sending direct mail to residents, and we're also going to be leaving door hangers. We've already started with marking out locations that wouldn't impact the front yard. And again, we're aiming to plant in November. And then we also have another project, Ready, Set, Grow. It is a $10 million grant with the U.S. Forest Service, and that will cover Otay Mesa and other locations. And that is it. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, we're available now to take them, or you can visit our website at sandiego.gov/trees for communities.
you, Olivia. And just to remind folks as well, urban greening or planting trees is one community emission reduction program, one CERP strategy that you've all helped identify as well. So it's a good opportunity to start advancing that particular CERP strategy through this program as well. Olivia and I believe Brian were with the CSE back in May, where you saw that map that Olivia had on the slide deck. That is actually showing where many of the community residents here today, right, provided feedback on kind of where they'd like to see the concentration of trees. And so, as Olivia mentioned, her and her team have already started going out there and making assessments in terms of what's possible within those priority locations. Olivia, I see a question by Stan in the chat box that says, is there a link to a map with the locations for San Isidro?
So we will make this presentation available to you, Shalem, to send out. So that map will be included in the presentation with the current locations that we have evaluated. And Brian may have more to add on to that.
You read my mind, Olivia. Yeah, we'll at some point here in the near future, we'll share those locations that we've identified, and we're still identifying more locations. So even though it's been 110, I think we're still just looking at in as many places as we can. We really do need people's help, I would say, in planting those trees on the back side of the sidewalk. That one slide that Olivia showed where the right-of-way in most cases goes 10 feet from the curb, but yet there's no tree planting strip or no tree well. So the only place that we can plant trees in many of the locations in San Isidro is basically on folks' front yards. So we're asking people to give us permission to do so, even though it is within the city's right-of-way. But what we really need is for folks in San Isidro to really spread the word, talk to your neighbors, talk to businesses, talk to whoever, and say, hey, look, trees are coming. I mean, they are coming like in the next couple of months. And we really want to plant as many trees as possible, but we need everyone's help down in San Isidro.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brian. I just have a follow-up question to that. I know that you said you're going to be using door hangers, but I'm wondering if you have any flyers in both English and Spanish that we can share with the folks here who are able to kind of share that far and wide, via social media or, just person to person. We'd be happy to disseminate that information, to share that out.
We are working on making that available. So it will be in English and Spanish, and I'll make sure to send it out when that is ready.
Awesome. I wanted to see if folks had any other questions or comments regarding Olivia's update.
I'll add here, unless someone puts something in the chat and I can't quite see it. But again, we know that trees provide so many benefits for the city of San Diego and for every community. Ecosystem benefits, including cleaning the air, stormwater runoff. In many cases, trees also reduce our electricity costs, especially in the summertime, especially folks that have air conditioning, but even folks that don't have air conditioning, trees can help reduce temperatures probably by 5, 10, maybe even 15 degrees, depending on the placement of the tree. So we're really excited to be planting trees down there. And the other thing too is that we promote trees for making our communities more livable, more walkable communities. Aesthetically, they're just pleasing to have. And we know San Isidro needs a lot more trees. We're just challenged with finding locations and planting them. But again, really open to a whole bunch of ideas. And we just want to get that word out there to get as many people to opt in for new street trees.
Thank you, Brian. I saw that Anna came off of mute. Anna, do you have something to share? Yeah. See that Lisa has a question here in the chat box. It's a great question. She said, hi, is there collaboration with schools for more trees? Sorry if this was brought up before.
Such a good question. I feel like we get that question often. So the city of San Diego doesn't have jurisdiction over school properties in general. There might be a couple of exceptions. Well, and one big exception is that there are a lot of school properties within the city limits that are joint use with the Parks and Recreation Department. So if there's those kind of opportunities, then we will explore them. We do find that there are sometimes limitations because school properties are pretty compact, and what space they have is usually used for recreation, such as football or baseball or other extracurricular activities. So it can be a challenge. We definitely have a good handful of parks in the area that we will be exploring, and we'll be chatting with Parks and Recreation Department about those opportunities, I think next week as well. I think Olivia may have said it, but she may have not. We can only plant trees on city property or within the city right of way. So those are our boundaries.
Yeah, thank you for specifying that. I think that's a really important component, right, of this particular funding being used. We've gotten a lot of comments in the past from community members in terms of the importance of planting trees on the periphery of schools to serve as buffers, whether that be, near the sidewalk in that right-of-way area, or even in terms of buffering between like freeways that are right up against schools as well. And but those parameters you mentioned for this funding, that might be not put them kind of in the eligible category as well. But it might be something worth looking into in the analysis to see if there are any right-of-ways near schools, because I know that there's a lot of idling as well that's taking place as folks are queuing up to go to the Mexican side of the border. So that's something that maybe as another kind of place to evaluate that could be looked at as well. Just kind of looking here. Yeah, go ahead.
Trees also provide shade too, right? So definitely think that's an important benefit, especially for school children that are walking to school and so forth, or whatever, are waiting for the bus in front of the school, things like that. So we know that trees are important for that aspect as well. We also have a watering component to this too as well. So once a tree is planted, we'll water that tree for 3 years, but there still is some limitations. You mentioned, cars queuing up at the border. I'm sure there may be some opportunities to plant in locations that are adjacent to those areas, but then it might be an accessibility issue. How do we get in there on a weekly basis to water those trees too? So we're trying to think about, all angles here and trying to solve some of those problems too as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Brian and Olivia. And I could certainly follow up with you what specific streets that community members have identified before in the past in terms of where that kind of queuing is happening, and see if that's a potential. I see Roxanne had a question in terms of she came in a little bit late, she heard that you all needed help, and really what that was around is just help spreading the word about the program, because it's going to be a lot of folks kind of on an interest basis that fits within those parameters. And so Roxanne, once Olivia and Brian have their flyers ready, they will share that with us, and we can share that with folks who are in this space this evening. With that, if there aren't any other questions or comments, I'm gonna transition us to the next item on the agenda. But thank you so much, Olivia and Brian, for being here this evening. And we definitely want to continue receiving updates and providing any kind of feedback that could be helpful for the tree program. And please do see this group as partners in getting the word out as well.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And we are looking forward to updating you all again very soon, I would say. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian and Olivia. Right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So we queue up for this next discussion. All right, and I'm going to go to presentation mode here. Just want to double check. Can you all see my screen okay? It should be a blue screen that says update.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I'm seeing them head nodding. All right, so there's going to be 3 different people from APCD that will be supporting with this presentation today. The first is Domingo Vigil, who is a deputy director here at the Air District. And then after that will be David Soderman, who's the chief of monitoring. And then William Jacks, who is the chief of compliance, who will be providing an update today on the Tijuana River Valley. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Domingo.
Thank you, Shalom. If we could go to the next slide. And my role in this presentation is very brief. I wanted to just share that as the APCD continues to document strong odors impacting South Bay communities, impacting residents' quality of life. And while the compounds associated with these odors may cause adverse health effects, such as headaches and nausea, preliminary data does not indicate an immediate threat to life. We want to reassure the public that this is a high priority issue for us, and we will continue collaborating with partner agencies. And also to share that for timely updates on the actions that we are taking as an agency in response to these air quality concerns, you can visit a webpage that we've created with more information, and I will make sure to put that on our chat so that everybody can have the link. Actually, the hyperlink is not going through. If I can get support from someone in the team to put up the webpage, that would be great. We would also like to highlight that there has been information out there about in different news outlets you might have heard reporting that a group of researchers from San Diego State University and UCSD reported finding elevated levels of hydrogen cyanide, which is a chemical compound that could be lethal in high quantities. We want to share that the County Hazardous Incident Response Team was deployed to assess this situation and was able to confirm that there was no threat to life or safety from hydrogen cyanide in the air. This was clarified with the research group and with the media, and we wanted to reiterate this message to make others aware and let everybody know in case people are still wondering if this is still an ongoing issue. And so with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, David Soderman, to provide an update on our monitoring activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Domingo. Go into the next slide there. One more. My name is David Soderman. I'm the chief of the monitoring division and technical services, and I'll provide an update on our monitoring efforts related to the Tijuana River Valley. The district was able to secure an EPA grant to procure 6 AQ mesh sensors and 1 Teledyne T101 analyzer to primarily track hydrogen sulfide levels over time, which is the main odorous component of untreated sewage in and around the Tijuana River Valley. The AQ mesh sensors operate on a solar battery system, which allows us to deploy them where we don't have access to power, and they are connected to a cellular network to transmit data 24/7. The Teledyne T101 analyzer will be used as a reference instrument to apply any needed corrections to the sensor data and will be deployed in San Isidro. Both instruments can operate 24/7 and provide hourly measurements. The original goal of this project was for trend analysis to better inform the community of odor patterns related to meteorological conditions. However, as the reported intensity and frequency of the odors have increased over the summer, the district shifted the design of this study and has greatly accelerated the process to provide more robust and quantitative data to inform public health officials. Next slide, please. This map shows the locations of where we're currently monitoring in blue and plan to monitor in orange. Initially, all 6 sensors were deployed at the San Diego Fire Station number 29 in San Isidro for testing and to be able to establish how different the measurements were from all the different sensors and how well they track one another. At this time, we've also deployed some of these sensors to the Imperial Beach Pier, the Tijuana River Valley Campground, and the International Wastewater Treatment Plant. We are also nearly finished with procuring the necessary infrastructure to deploy one at the Imperial Beach City Hall / fire station location, and we're researching a potential location in the community of Nestor. And I would like to point out that we are actually in the community of Nestor as of yesterday. Next slide, please. Before I share some of our preliminary data, I would like to point out that there are a number of standards and reference levels for hydrogen sulfide. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, and the California Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment standard is based on a 1-hour average level set to 30 parts per billion. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health has set the immediate dangerous to life or health level at 100 parts per million, which is equal to 100,000 parts per billion. We are in communication with the CDC's Office of Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, the California Department of Public Health, and the County of San Diego, and we have provided our preliminary data to them and will continue to do so to get assistance in analyzing the data and the potential impacts to the community. While hydrogen sulfide may cause adverse health effects such as headaches and nausea, based on the data available to us, at no time have we seen levels that would approach the NIOSH's standard at 100,000 parts per billion, the level at which there's an immediate threat to life or health. However, the current levels continue to negatively impact people's quality of life in the affected communities. Next slide, please. This graph displays the preliminary data from one of our sensors from the time it was deployed at the San Diego Fire Station number 29 in San Isidro. All the sensors show the same trend. And we're seeing the following trends in the data so far. Number one, higher concentrations are seen during the nighttime hours and lower concentrations during the day. Number two, the concentrations in the last 3 months are higher than the preceding several months. And the last one, the levels this past weekend, and not this past weekend, but the previous weekend, are the highest values we've seen in the nearly 11 months of collecting data. And now I'll turn over the rest of the presentation to William.
Hello, everyone. My name is William. Actually, there is an additional slide, it looks like, for you.
David, I don't know if Domingo or David, if you wanted to cover kind of what is APCD's ongoing actions regarding monitoring and collaboration.
Yes, I can cover this. Thank you for flagging, Shala. So part of the ongoing actions that we are focusing on for monitoring communications and collaboration is to share our data with other health agencies to keep them informed. As David shared earlier, we have been in communication with a number of local, state, and federal agencies to make them aware of our monitoring findings here. And we're also collaborating now with the group of researchers from UCSD and San Diego State who have been conducting studies in the River Valley. We also are collaborating with the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry to get assistance in analyzing our data and potential impacts to the community. We understand that the local public health department is also going to be working on a study that will look at longer-term health effects from exposure to hydrogen sulfide as a result of the, which is what people are smelling in the Tijuana River Valley. So more information to come on that. Next slide, please. And then also we'll continue to provide information updates on our monitoring activities. I shared a website, a webpage link earlier, and we are planning on updating that information, including the trends that we are seeing with the levels of hydrogen sulfide from our monitoring activities, and also post odor advisories on our website to alert the community of strong odors and address potential concerns. Some of the actions that we were directed to do this past Thursday as a result of a meeting we had with our board of directors is to develop a public information campaign to provide the public with relevant, accurate, and timely information on air quality, partnering with school districts, cities, and with the county to make sure that if there are any concerns, those can be communicated immediately to those communities that are affected. We will also be working with the Office of Emergency Services for the county and the city to provide emergency alerts and rapid response in case there's an imminent threat to public health from air quality issues. So we are covering all of these different elements because we're looking at this issue more comprehensively, and we want to make sure that all of the community that is being affected by the odors has information available as to what it is that we're doing, and all the data that we're collecting from our monitoring activities. And with that, I will turn it over to William.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'm very happy to be here to give this update. Actually, before I begin, I do see a hand up. Shalem, are we taking questions now or are we waiting till the end? How are we doing this?
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I think a lot of information has been shared. So why don't we take a moment to pause?
Makes sense.
And I see Paula, your hand up. Paula?
Yeah, thank you. This is Paula Granados at SDSU. I just wanted to back up for one quick second and see if, and Domingo, thank you for that update. I'm just curious if you could back up to that slide where you talked about the hydrogen cyanide levels real quick, because I could just share some really quick info on that. And I know, Domingo, you've heard this before, but it would be really good for me as the person that called this in to actually say what happened just quickly.
Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, if you don't mind, and I'll be really
Not
quick.
at all. Not at all. Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, our first attempt going into the field to do some monitoring to find, where our drones could fly was kind of late in the night, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And that's when our hydrogen sulfide meters, that is a 5-gas meter that has hydrogen cyanide, sulfide, O2, and carbon monoxide and VOCs on it, started sounding pretty loudly. The hydrogen sulfide levels went up pretty high. And that's whenever our hydrogen cyanide meters also started going off, and it saturated it. At the time, I trust the data and then I verify it. So I pulled my team out, and this is whenever we called, and I think I just have to say, like, it was pretty frightening for us in the field to see that, not knowing what was going on, and also with the horrendous smell that we were smelling, and our first responders' eyes were burning, their skin was burning, they had headaches. It was, kind of like a very interesting situation where nobody really knew what to do. And so the incident response team who came out the next day, also, when they came out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, said, hey, our meters are going off too. Maybe it's cross sensitivity, but we're not sure. They started to have an incident where they took all our names and numbers down. We're, trying to kind of figure out how to test. The Draeger tube that they released at that time to test for cyanide was inconclusive. And so they did come out later on that night. Meanwhile, I did some research between that afternoon and that evening, and it turns out that most meters actually don't work very well, these gas multimeters, in an environment where there's high hydrogen sulfide. It's just a really poor environment for these meters because they're going to cross-react. There's very few meters, except for some super expensive ones out there, that will accurately report hydrogen cyanide. So this was kind of a learning experience for the hazardous response team. We were kind of thinking this was the case, but we weren't sure. And so we were really grateful to hear from DEHQ the following day that it was indeed a cross reaction. We're not 100% sure that there's no cyanide in the air, hydrogen cyanide, but of course it's not at those levels that were, an imminent health threat, of course. And so I just wanted to back up and say that's the story straight from me, from my mouth, the one that called it in. And I have to be very honest with you all and say, I actually did not know what to do when I saw that. I didn't know if I should call 911 or if I should call I mean, it's like, do you call FEMA? Who do you call at that? I don't have the, how to, I'm just at that point, I'm just an academic and a citizen. And so I sent an email out to a lot of people, but it's, knowing now, email's probably not the best way to report these kinds of things. But, I just wanted to be honest with everyone and say that this situation down in the Tijuana River Valley, it's confusing because the hydrogen sulfide levels are causing a lot of horrible odors that, and even at lower parts per million, can cause a lot of negative health effects in the moment. And even with respirators, you can still feel nausea, headaches, confusion. And so, not saying that's exactly what happened, but I will say it was pretty frightening for us as our team to not know what was going on. But it's a lesson learned, and I'm really grateful that we're getting the message out that there was not alarming levels of hydrogen cyanide, but there were alarming levels of hydrogen sulfide that's mucking up our sensors. And so I just wanted to come out in the open and say it. And I appreciate your opportunity to share that with you all. And I don't know if people have questions for me, but I can answer questions later.
No,
Thank you,
thank you.
Paula.
No, I was just gonna say the same thing. Yeah, thank you so much, Paula, for sharing, kind of walking us through kind of the experience and what you all saw on the ground, but also clarifying, right, that the instrument being used, when there's those high levels of hydrogen sulfide, which our instruments are also picking up, which David shared that weekend, we're also seeing high levels even with our trend analysis, that sometimes it gets false readings for like the hydrogen cyanide, and having the hazardous response team come out that has the specialized instrumentation and also the protective equipment, right, as well, to be out there was key. And I know that, and we're really thankful that you and your team have been in communication since then with APCD and also the county as well to come up with the plan, right? As you all are out there doing research moving forward, what is kind of the plan and process to get hazardous response team out there as soon as possible if levels are high, and we do need to share that information as quickly as possible, right, with the community. But to one of the points you mentioned, and I believe Domingo and also David reiterated, right, even with the levels of hydrogen sulfide, not cyanide, but hydrogen sulfide, right, that we're talking about, what APCD monitors for, those levels too, can be known, even though they're not at the levels of imminent, the language is like imminent threat to health and life, but those levels can still cause headaches and nausea and what many in the community already are experiencing. So I really appreciate you elevating that as well. And that there's still health impacts, even though it may not reach to the level of that particular threshold, and certainly more research, right, needs to be done in terms of what are those long-term effects even at those other threshold levels as well. So appreciate you sharing that. I don't know if Domingo, if you wanted to, I know you were starting to share something, if you wanted to share anything else.
Thank you, Sean. No, you really covered it well. That's exactly what I was hoping to share. So I think we can move on if there are other questions.
Yeah, I see a question actually from Alejandro. He asked in the chat box, could I get a clarification? So the data seems to be surpassing the various moments, 30 ppb mark that CARB and OSHA have set. Did I read that graph right? And I'll go to that graph in just a second. And despite it's not close to immediate threat or health threshold, this is having a community health impact, right? So I'm going to go to that graph. I could also turn it over to David Soderman to share, and Domingo.
Actually, yeah, I'm happy to address that question. That's a good question. So that 30 parts per billion standard is an odor nuisance standard. It's not necessarily a health-based standard. So what that means is that at that point is when it becomes to start more of a nuisance that people in the community can smell it. And this is just I guess this standard is a guideline because people can smell hydrogen sulfide at different levels. People have different sensitivity to smell. So it doesn't necessarily mean that below 30 ppb, people are not going to smell it. People can still smell it sometimes. Some people can smell it won't even be able to smell it at 30 ppb. So it does vary. But to your point, Alejandro, and as we shared, yes, these these odors are having an impact on people. We've heard it from all of you. That you get nausea, you get headaches. It's hard for folks to sleep at night with the odor. So those are certainly impacts. And what we are trying to work on with the agencies that set some of these standards are to learn more about what are some of the levels at which we would need to alert public health authorities or even the population to take any additional measures. For example, at which point should folks maybe be deterred from doing activities outside or closing their windows or any other types of measures. So that's what we're hoping to get at with our collaboration with these other agencies, and hopefully we'll be able to share more information on that as we continue to work with them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Domingo. And just want to uplift Olga's comments in the chat box that we need community constant town hall meeting in San Isidro. So, as people really wanting to have other venues and spaces, right, to be able to share this type of information that we're sharing tonight. So thank you for sharing that, Olga. I certainly want to think about ways that we can continue to get the information out, whether it be town hall or other ways. And Olga also says, breathing this every day for a long time is causing us sickness. And and we definitely acknowledge that's what we're hearing from folks that are calling in as well, and uplift that experience here as well. And then I see a question from Cody, or actually before I go to Cody's question, I just want to see if Alejandro, if that answered your question or if you had a follow-up question.
No, it answered my question. Just I guess from the other comments in the chat, I can see that there's not really an understanding for this kind of low-level exposure through long-term because it's not supposed to be like that.
Exactly.
No, it answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah. I see a question here from Cody. They say, are there any other cities that can be referenced who have overcome this problem with H2S or hydrogen sulfide, right? In the air. So are there any other cities that could be referenced who have overcome this problem? I don't know if Domingo or even Paula might know. Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to address that. We, as part of our collaboration and conversations with other agencies, we are learning from our neighbors in the north, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, which is basically our counterpart for the counties north of us, LA, San Bernardino, Orange, etc. They experienced something similar with the Dominguez Canal, where there were some issues related to hydrogen sulfide. So we're also looking at their experience, and they are sharing with us some of the measures that they were able to take, and we're trying to learn more from those other cases to see what from there can be applied, if anything, to us here locally.
Thank you, Domingo. I just want to uplift too for folks what's being mentioned additionally in the chat box. Paula shares that we cannot use occupational standards to assess health in a community setting. Unfortunately, that's all that exists currently, right? So we need to set better standards for our community. And I think the Air District's in agreement in terms of collaborating on what those standards should be. And I just want to see if before we move to William's part of the presentation, which is going to be around compliance and the notice of violation, just want to see if there's any other questions or comments before we move to the next part of the presentation. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and actually turn it over to William, but great questions and great discussions.
course, right when my time came up, my sensor went off. There it is. Okay, my light's on again. Good evening, everyone. My name is William Jacks. I am the chief of the compliance division for the district. I have been a member of the compliance division for nearly 25 years. So I've seen many different types of odor situations and complaint responses related to odors and different types of sources. And this by far is something that is very, very unique. I will be providing our update on the enforcement efforts related to the obvious public impact near the Tijuana River Valley. So since July 19, 2024, we have received over 2,000. It says nearly in the slide, but since this making of this presentation, we've now received over 2,000 odor complaints from South Bay communities. This is the highest number of complaints we have ever received regarding a source. For additional context, for the past several years, we received on average a total of 800 complaints per year. So that's in a year, 800. We've received since July over 2,000. The slide, so that definitely shows and demonstrates and documents the impact to the public just by the outreach and the response from the public. This slide shows some of the concerns reported by the communities impacted by these odors. And we want to acknowledge that the conditions causing these concerns are unacceptable. Nobody should be exposed to these type of odors. Our inspectors are out there very, very frequently, and it's recognizable that, you know, they're there and they're there constantly, but they're not living there for the most part. We do have some inspectors that do live nearby or inside the communities as well, but just experiencing that and documenting, you know, there's clear recognition of what the public is going through. So we have documented violations of local and state air quality regulations, which resulted in enforcement actions against the International Boundary and Water Commission, or IBWC, and their contractor, Veolia. We will continue to enforce our laws to the full extent of our jurisdiction. Next slide, please. So another critical problem has been that the sewage that is being directed to the Tijuana River is not being treated by IBWC. So this slide shows data published by IBWC regarding the amount of untreated flow going to the Tijuana River. According to IBWC, earlier this month, there were about 90 million gallons of untreated flows per day going to the river, but there should not be any flow going to the river, especially during the dry season. IBWC reported it is monitoring the flows and its data is available to the public. So you can see on this slide a QR code. This QR code provides access to this data that they're providing on their website. So according to IBWC, as of last week, as an update, is that the majority of the flow has been diverted to the wastewater treatment plant in Mexico, and they've reported that they've seen a significant drop in sewage flow. The district compliance division, despite this, is continuing and will continue to investigate to respond to complaints, document odors, and verify to see if this trend continues. Next slide, please. So on July 29th, 2024, San Diego Air Pollution Control District issued a notice of violation to IBWC and their contractor Veolia for creating a public nuisance. Subsequently, on August 30th, 2024, SDAPCD issued another violation to IBWC and its contractor Veolia, since we have not been able to document compliance with public nuisance regulations. The notices of violations were issued because we have been documenting strong odors that are negatively impacting communities, which is a public nuisance and a violation of SDAPCD's Rule 51 and state law. While this is still an ongoing violation, we have determined that the public nuisance is primarily due to a combination of outdated infrastructure and inadequate maintenance, both of which fall under the responsibility of IBWC and Veolia. So this slide also includes a QR code, and for this one, it has this for our webpage that was specifically created to provide transparent and timely updates on these actions. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps regarding the compliance, our top priority our top priority is to keep the public well informed. We will maintain complete transparency regarding the scale of this issue and the resources required to address it. As mentioned earlier, we've created a web page that will be regularly updated with the latest information on this investigation. We'll also continue to collaborate with other agencies, including the State Water Board, County of San Diego, California Air Resources Board, the EPA, IBWC, and others, all of which have a role in addressing this issue. As previously mentioned, this is a significant environmental issue that extends beyond air quality concerns. Therefore, closely working with these other agencies that have a strong role is essential. This month, we will be meeting with IBWC representatives to discuss the violations and better understand the steps that they are taking to comply with our air quality regulations. Based on the outcome of that discussion, we will assess and determine the appropriate next steps for enforcement. Regardless of whether we continue to receive air quality complaints, I want to assure the public and everyone in attendance here is our investigations will persist. Once we document a violation, our standard procedure is to continue the investigation until we verify compliance. Our inspectors are on the ground in the impacted communities multiple days per week to document any ongoing impacts. Next slide, please. That should be the conclusion of my section and open to any questions. And I see that there is some in the chat, or at least some comments.
Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just taking a look. Okay, so Alejandro asks, so the sewage treatment plant in Punta Bandera is functioning now? Whoops. Or is it being pumped out untreated? I'm wondering, Domingo, do we have clarity on that?
I'm sorry, Sheldon, could you repeat that question? Clarity
Yeah,
on what,
so
sorry?
yeah, so Alejandro asked in the chat box if the sewage treatment plant in Punta Bandera is functioning now, or is it being pumped out untreated? If we know the details on that.
Got it. I unfortunately don't have any information on that.
So my understanding is that the San Antonio de los Buenos is operational, at least partially, and that don't have full extent of that. But what really came online that was critical here was the pump stations that diverted the flow away from to the U.S. side. So the flow is being rerouted on the Mexican side. But if we can, that's, I think the question is diverted to where, and we can get more specific information. Again, we will be meeting with IBWC later this week, actually next week, and we'll have more information. We'll also be providing an update to our governing board in November, where we'll have more of an update then as well.
Alejandro, I do see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, follow up to that. So and I don't know if you mentioned it actually, but is IBWS also in charge of the pump station on Hollister as well? Like, is that part of their maintenance?
Yes, they are. Those Hollister pump station and Goat Canyon pump stations that were both down, they are responsible. And as of Monday, we were alerted that those are both back online. So they have reported that, and we have inspected and verified that they are operational. And the flow coming from there, based on our documentation on Monday, is that they are no longer being diverted to the Tijuana River and being sent to the treatment plant.
And I see a comment in the chat box from Paula. They say, we have a health survey coming out to find out firsthand the health impacts. We've started going house to house already near hotspots. This is beyond a nuisance, but a health risk. I appreciate EPCD having this line of communication for people to report. And Paula, you could also share that link to that survey with this group, and we do have a listserv of folks in the community. Happy to share that out as well in this space. And then in terms of your other comment, beyond a nuisance but a health risk, maybe we could talk a little bit about kind of like what's in APCD's kind of toolkit to address this issue, and why maybe the term nuisance is being used.
Can you repeat that question, Shalem?
Yeah, so the statement is around like this being beyond a nuisance, but a health risk. So we're using kind of the nuisance uh element in our toolkit to address this issue. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, so within the Air Pollution Control District, and when it comes to enforcing rules that are within our authority, which are Air Pollution Control District rules that we write, or federal or state regulations that we have authority to enforce. So within those rules, typically we would enforce emissions that are coming from a facility, something that is typically within the United States. So this is again very unique, as is that there's a lot of different players here. So because of that, there is an overarching rule to kind of address certain situations, to enforce an impact to the public that where the district may not require permits or require specific additional requirements. So with that, if regardless of any other rule or regulation, if there is an impact to the public that's related to air pollution, the district has the authority to be able to enforce that. So that's why this is the rule, the only rule that the district has authority to enforce in this case. Hopefully that answers that question.
Lane, I see Paula, your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Willem. That's a great, and I agree with you. The nuisances with that 0.03 parts per million, 30 parts per billion states as a threshold, and that's why we call it a nuisance. And I'm just kind of my thoughts would be it's I don't know if this is rhetorical or if it's an actual answerable question, but as we start to collect this health survey data, because that's the only real data that we're going to have right now about people's health risks, because as we found out yesterday going door to door to 5 or 6 different houses, all of them said, I don't have insurance, I don't have a primary care. I felt like going to the doctor, but I couldn't. Another person said I started to go to the emergency room, but then I felt better after I got out of the community, and so they turned around. It's really interesting that I think that the data that we might collect about the health risks, and wondering if that would be supportive of APCD in trying to address, the nuisance issue. If you could add health risks to that, if we're able to support hard data showing that actual health risks are elevated in the community, if that would be supportive of IBWC's violations in any form or fashion. It's kind of uncharted territory, like I said earlier today. So I hope that we can collect some better health data so we can actually corroborate what we're hearing in the community with some actual hard data, and then supply that to county health. And then will APCD also work with county health, and maybe they can also help to issue violations as well? You may not have an answer to that, but it would be great if in a perfect world, if we could do that, it would be wonderful.
I do have an answer to that. So Rule 51, as well as the Health and Safety Code section that mirrors our Rule 51 related to public nuisance, it's the impact to the public, considerable impact to the public. So based on the number of complaints, the number of times we have been able to verify odors and identify the source, that is all we need, and that's all we need to consistently need. But with that said, I doesn't want to discourage by any means the data. So I think that, any data could support it, but I think where we are now and the methods that we use our nose and the public news, because that is what the community is using. They're not out there, and it's like, what does 30 parts per billion mean? And like I said before, it can be an impact to some people and not an impact to others. The nose is a better detector than any gauge is. People can smell things before any reading comes on a gauge. So that's why that method and has been used for years and been used consistently statewide, is because it's a clear demonstration and connection to what the public is experiencing. And that is what we want to be able to demonstrate. What is the public experiencing on any complaint we receive? So if someone's specifically odors, it might be other things where we would use, if other complaints were related to odors, when someone smells something and it's bothering them, and if we can document a considerable impact to the public, or an impact to a considerable number of persons, as it says, then they have potentially could be in violation of our public nuisance rule. So again, if there is additional data that supports and says that there's medical impact, absolutely, that could be supportive. But I'm saying with what we have and the methods we're using now, it is sufficient, but more is better. I have no problem with additional information. Paula, do you still have your hand up in response to that? Or okay.
I just one quick question. I know in your report, on the app, at least I've been with community members when they're filling it out. Is there any possible way to have just even one question that says, did you feel bad? I don't know, I can't find my words today, I'm too tired, but did you have any health impact? Did you feel any health impacts from the smell or something? Just a quick, I don't want to give up the public, the health information, but there might just be one little question you could add on there. Did you have any negative health effects or feelings during this episode of smelling this? I don't know. Is that possible?
And I appreciate that. And I think you're talking about the APCD complaint app that is accessible to the public that where we receive majority of our complaints. So the question is there, but it kind of is all inclusive. So it didn't want to narrow it to something where are you having medical impacts, because that might exclude other people, because this app is to be used for many things, not just odors. It could be dust, it could be smoke, it can be, reporting unpermitted equipment. So, but it does, and most of the responses we receive complaints does specifically that. And that is something that's critical. If you want to go back to that slide, Shalem, when I mentioned that we received over 2,000 complaints, this is all verbatim from the app, people's statements. And this is the stuff that I can put for public view. So definitely people have been very candid, people have been very open, and they're so as you can see in these, it does mention how it's impacted them, how they're feeling, what type of experience they're having from being near the source. So this is so I think the app we don't, two specific questions could eliminate. So I think, but the questions we do have, we are capturing this data. Hopefully that's helpful.
Great questions, everyone. I just want to, before we move on to the next section regarding air filters, I just want to see if there's any other questions or comments on what William shared today. All right, thank you so much, William. That was super informative.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course, I'll hang out in case there's any additional questions later. Sorry.
I think I see one. Alejandro, you have a question?
Yeah. I know you're meeting with I forgot what the treatment plan is called.
IBWC, yes.
IBWC, yes.
Sure.
Later this week or next week, but could you also ask is there any ETA on when it will be like even partially back up and running?
So there's many different layers. This is an active enforcement case. So because there's a legal element to this, there are some limitations moving forward in the enforcement case. So I did provide what I was able to provide, but regarding up and running. So yes, that's something that I think IBWC would report on, as they, like I said, they have reported that the pump stations are up and running. But there are more layers to this. There's, I think, the plant themselves. There's some repair that's needed there. Again, there will be a meeting, like I discussed, and whatever information we can provide, we definitely will. And like I said, in November, there's a request from our governing board to provide an update. Here is where, okay, thank you, Lauren. This is also, yes, our complaint mapping tool she put in the chat, and that documents the where and what is being reported by the public. Again, bear with us too. Like I said, we've received on average 800 in a year, and we received over 2,000 in just a couple months. So we are nearly caught up with updating all these records with our great team, but there might be some incomplete information in there, but it does capture at least the location and that a complaint was registered. And as we catch up, there will be that information on there will be more complete.
Thank you, William, and thanks, Lauren, for adding those links as in the chat box as folks have been presenting. Paul asked the question, you know, how do we get APCD more funds? Y'all are underfunded for the size of our communities and address such big problems like this ongoing crisis. Would love the state to give more support for better monitoring. Thanks for what you can, and that's something that our team has been working hard to identify additional funding for support, both at the state level and the federal level, and certainly our small team is doing the best they can with all hands on deck. Domingo, do you have more to share on that?
Yes, thank you. And what I would say is that any advocacy efforts at the state or federal level for more funding for our agency to address this issue are welcome from any entity, whether it's a private citizen or a research institution or whoever. It's certainly welcomed. So thank you for looking at that and for being partners with us on this.
I think we have one more question on the notice of violation, William, and I'm not sure if you're able to kind of answer this question, but it says you also mentioned the contractor Veolia, and what's their kind of responsibility in this as being the other entity that's cited?
Yeah, so what's public information? Veolia is contracted by IBWC to help maintain the pump stations and the plant.
Yeah. So just kind of their role in it as being a contractor.
Yep. So that's
to do that work.
That's right. Yep. So that's what I can share. Yep.
All right. Thanks, William. All right. So we're going to transition to the next item on the agenda with Domingo, who will be going over the status of the county's air filter program and then what that might look like also moving forward as well. So Domingo.
Thank you, Shalom. So the US EPA has committed 160. We have to update this because just in the last few hours we learned that we're receiving additional funding. So $160,000 in grant funding for San Diego Air Pollution Control District to support deploying indoor air purifiers to the community affected by sewage odors to help provide some temporary relief. In response to the ongoing Tijuana River Valley sewage crisis, in June of this year, the County Board of Supervisors allocated $100,000 in funding to provide free air purifiers to homes in areas affected by ambient odors. And so in August, the county coordinated registrations throughout the eligible area, as shown on the slide, and a randomized drawing from the registration pool to identify participants in the pilot program. So we have identified, SDAPCD has identified an opportunity to partner with the county through their existing air purifier pilot program to help deploy additional air purifiers as quickly as possible with these new funds that we will receive from EPA. Our board of supervisors, the SDAPCD governing board approved and authorized our agency to enter into an agreement with the San Diego County to provide these additional funding to the county for their air purifier pilot program. And this partnership with the county would allow us to more expeditiously deploy the indoor air filters to the affected community. Next slide, please. The board also provided direction to develop a plan to continue funding and distributing air purifiers. So we have pulled together our internal team to find the best way for our agency to carry out this direction. And we have some ideas for potential funding, including funds from the AB 617 incentive funding and that we expect will be able to help with this effort. So we would like to hear from the community any feedback they have on the county program to help us design something that works well and quickly for the affected residents.
Thanks, Domingo. And just to kind of reiterate some of the points you mentioned, just really quick summary. So $160,000 will be granted from the EPA. the APCD board took action to be able to give that money to the county to support their ongoing pilot program of air filters distribution. But we also got direction right from our board in terms of housing future distribution of air filters inside of APCD, right, with our APCD staff and resources. And then your last questions, and then we'd be looking for funding to fund that program within APCD. And then a key question too is hearing from folks on this call and beyond, you know, as APCD takes that program on in-house, what are maybe some key factors from maybe what we learned from the first pilot program as well that we should take into consideration when developing that program in-house for air filter distribution. So love to hear from folks if there's any questions about the air filters program currently at the county, the pilot program, but also if there's any feedback on as APCD takes on that active role of distributing future filters in the near term, if there's any requests or advice or feedback, general feedback of like how we should potentially roll out that program.
I had a quick comment.
Jenny, yeah.
Hi, Jenny Quintana. Hi, everybody. I just think we should really be carefully looking at which filters to deploy. We had a conversation earlier at a different meeting about this, but I've just heard secondhand, maybe Paula Granados, if you're still there, that Dr. Prather has been testing filters with specifically if they can remove H2S or hydrogen sulfide, which is the rotten egg smell in the air, and has found some that work better than others. I don't know, Paula, if you want to comment, but I think it'd be very important to have the correct ones, especially given the unique nature of these odors that we have, and really unpleasant and unbearable odors that are occurring. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Quintana, for bringing that up. Absolutely. So Ken Prather and I have been talking a lot about which air filters would be appropriate. I think the first round of air filters that went out do a good job at, you know, filtering out some of the pathogens and stuff, but aren't really getting to the core of the H2S, the hydrogen sulfide, which is, again, what Dr. Quintana said, the smelly toxic gas that's out there. So I think that Dr. Prather had some great ideas. They actually have an Airbnb out in Imperial Beach where they have been testing different types of filters to see which ones work better with their hydrogen sulfide fancy, I call them their fancy schmancy monitors they have out there. And they found that they have a couple of them. I think that they said that they were, I'm going to forget what she said, permanganate and something. She knows the language for this, but they were able to immediately drop the levels of hydrogen sulfide within 5 minutes within this household situation with these filters. And she's been trying to communicate, I think, with the congressman and the people that are advocating for the funds to make sure they get the right filters so that way that the houses are able to actually help filter out some of the gases and not just the pathogens as well. I think that's forthcoming.
Thank you, Jenny and Paula, for uplifting that. And that's something definitely our team, and I know Kathy's on the line and can probably speak more to this, but any recommendations of particular filters that you all are doing in terms of your site testing, please do share that information with our team, before we procure those filters. I know that also Kathy on our team is in communication with the California Air Resources Board, CARB as well, who also does a bunch of testing as well in regards to filters, primarily in terms of particulate matter, but also has done other testing as well. So we're looking at their data as well to make well-informed decisions, and also decisions to think about too, cost per unit, right? A filter too is like how can we have our dollars stretch and also at the same time, right, be most effective as well. So I don't know if Domingo or Kathy, if you want to maybe share more on that, that's definitely something that is on our radar.
No, I think you covered it really well, Shalem and Paula. And if you guys have that information about the filters that you're testing, we'd appreciate hearing about it.
I can get that for you right now. If you could just tell me who to send it to, I'll text
Yeah.
her right now.
You could send it to me. I'll put my email address in the chat.
Thank you so much. Happy to do that.
Thank you all. Want to see if there's any other questions, comments, feedback in terms of, in addition to filters, right? Being really important, making sure the filters that are purchased are the filters best capable to address not only the pathogens, right, but also hydrogen sulfide, which is the odor causing compound. Any other thoughts in terms of like what we should take into consideration in deploying such a large scale program as well?
I have another thought if you want to hear it.
Jenny.
I guess one thing that came up for us, we actually just got funding to also, but not for a little while, put some air filters and test them in homes in San Ysidro and look at exposures in the homes from the National Institute of Health. But the project won't start for a while. So I'd like to have everything happen sooner. But one question that came up for us is how long are the filters good for? How often do you change them? Are residents going to be given packs of filters so they have it, or are they going to come around and give them new ones? But just kind of keeping it going instead of just one time handing out the equipment is just an issue that came up for us.
Absolutely. Definitely our team internally has been thinking about that. I don't know, Kathy, if you maybe want to share a little bit more of what are the thoughts around, how long and then replacements.
Yeah, it really does depend on the filter unit, how long those filters last and what you're filtering out. And so we've got some more work to do to try and figure out that balance. We do know for the pilot program that the county was doing, they provided both the purifier unit and 2 replacement filters. And so I think we're looking at that as a model.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions or feedback about a program?
I just want to chime in real quick. I think, Paula, you'd mentioned permanganate. From my recollection, it might be potassium permanganate. If whatever information
That's
you're
exactly what it
sharing,
was.
that's
You
what it
got
was.
it.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I was brain fog right there for a moment.
All good.
I'll still get the email in writing from Kim. Exactly. I know she shared it with others, and I'll make sure you all get it and share it with whoever you need to share it with. And I think also if anybody else is looking to do filters or filter studies, we should definitely talk. So.
Absolutely. And Jenny, even though maybe your study is a little bit, a little bit more long-term and that data won't be collected maybe right away for this, but, APCD is also looking to down the line in the future also expand filter programs in other communities as well. So that data will also be helpful for ongoing efforts at APCD as well. So let's definitely be in communication regarding that information and all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any last questions, comments on filters? So we have a question here from David. It says, how long can the community provide feedback on the filter program? I think that's a great question. Maybe Kathy can maybe support with.
Sure. We haven't set a deadline or anything. And I think getting feedback as soon as possible. We are in the process of trying to design a program right now. So if you have immediate feedback, that's very helpful. But if something occurs to you 2 weeks from now or a month from now, we're happy to hear that. This is going to be kind of a longer term program for us, I think. And so feedback is welcome at any time, but sooner is best.
Yeah. Thanks, David. And Lisa, I see your hand up.
Hi, good evening. This is great. Thank you for all this information. One of the things I wanted to kind of uplift is the approach where folks have to opt in and go out of their way to be informed, request one of the filters, or can it be more proactive in the county and county partners, even Casa Familiar saying, we recommend that all homes, especially in these zones, obtain one of these filters and almost take it to your door kind of thing, and make it really hard for folks to not have one. Just wondering if there's a real proactive intention to do as much as possible and support those actions and the funding that's required in order to be so proactive.
It's a really great point, Lisa. I think what we're planning on doing is developing a communications and outreach strategy that's informed by community partners like Casa Familiar as well. But also we know that given the amount of households, right, that are in need, and given our capacity at APCD, but also there are also better messengers in APCD, right, to do that. And so we are going to really seek partnerships with community-based organizations, health clinics, community leaders to help support with the deployment of that. And I think the idea that you brought today to the table could be one of many strategies that you know, community-based organizations and others can support with as well. So we definitely want to continue those lines of communication with Casa and others as well. As we begin to kind of develop that communications and outreach plan, but also to ensure that deployment is one that is not just a one-size-fits-all approach, right? But that it's a layered approach, and it's an approach as well that we're going to have to, because we can't get all 10,000 or more out all at once. So we're going to need to have a process, a well-informed process of priority areas and priority you know, households as well. And so we'd love to work with you and others in helping determine what those kind of priority either zones and you know, individuals who should be part of kind of the first few rounds as well. All right. Yeah, we'd love to hear your you know, have your research as well, Paula, in terms of kind of priority areas as well that can help inform how we can best do distribution. Yeah, and I see Lisa's comment about including San Ysidro Health would be great. Glad those ideas are in the works. Yes, priority zones are important. So yeah, thank you for uplifting that, Lisa. Something we're thinking about, but I think, you know, we also, right, like there are areas in terms of areas of priority or individuals of priority maybe we're not kind of thinking about right now, that we'd love to hear other folks' thoughts on that as well. So with that, given kind of where we're at in time, I want to make sure Kathy has an opportunity to share more on that. We're going to transition to the AB 617 incentives program, but I just want to share though that the Tijuana River Valley issue is going to be really a standing issue that we'll probably touch on in some way every single IBCSC meeting that we have, whether it be a very long kind of discussion like we've had today, or just kind of updates. It's going to be certainly a standing conversation in this meeting space. So if this is your first time in this space today, welcome. And we certainly want to ensure and invite you to future conversations. Certainly this shouldn't be the only place where we're having these types of conversation 100%. So if there's other opportunities to engage directly with community members that you're in relationship with, or neighbors and friends, let us know. We'd love to connect with folks in other spaces as well. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kathy.
Thank you. I know we could talk about this issue all night. It's super important, but we have other things to talk about too. And one of those is, as many of you know, the district administers AB 617 grant funding to support emission reduction projects that improve air quality in our AB 617 communities. Every year we receive funds from the state, and we ask businesses and organizations to apply for that money. Next slide, please. Oops, there we go. So to date, the district's been allocated about $85 million from the state over the past 6 years. We've committed almost 43 million of that to projects that are benefiting our AB 617 and disadvantaged communities. We are looking also at, we've heard from the community that air filters are an important piece both for our portside and international border communities. So we've set aside some money already for air filters in those communities to expand our PAIR program. That was even before we were talking about this Tijuana River Valley situation. So we're looking to use some of that incentive funding to help with Tijuana River also. We also have some money set aside. As many of you have been following, we're working on an MOU with the Port District. And part of that is a funding commitment from the district to help replace equipment at the port and trucks that service the port to go to zero emission. And so those are important projects too. Given all of that, we have about $37 million left to allocate in the AB 617 program this year. Next slide, please. Oops. Of course, now my computer decides to be weird. Okay. So this year we received a variety of applications for projects. We received applications for natural gas trucks, for agricultural equipment, for electric trucks, for marine vessels, and infrastructure to support that zero emission equipment. We did put together, hopefully those of you who are on this meeting also got a chance to look at the white paper that we put together just on those incentives. It gives a little more detail on what how the funding works and what we've received and what money we have available. One of the things I wanted to emphasize to you today is that we've heard the feedback from the communities really to prioritize and focus on zero emission equipment. So when we looked at the applications that were eligible for AB 617 funding, we really tried to focus on those projects that were either zero emission equipment or that infrastructure, that those charging stations to allow people to use that zero emission equipment. And so what we're bringing to you tonight are recommendations to fund the projects that you see on this slide. There's $13 million in projects that would benefit portside communities. So that's about $500,000 in zero emission trucks for that community. We're looking to repower a marine vessel. We know that vessels on the port are contributing to the diesel particulate that's affecting portside. And we're looking at supporting 4 heavy-duty charging stations so that people can make the transition to heavy-duty trucks, particularly in portside. We're also looking at funding 2 heavy-duty charging stations at the international border community to support cross-border and trucks that are operating in South County to go all the way to zero emission. We've heard from the business communities that it's vitally important that charging stations start to become available if we want to make that transition to zero emission trucks. We have one other project in El Cajon, which is also designated a disadvantaged community under the CalEnviroScreen criteria for a heavy duty charging station there as well for about $2.2 million. So in total, we're looking at providing about $25.5 million for projects to facilitate either buy zero emission equipment or help fund infrastructure to make that zero emission equipment possible to use in these communities. So like I said, we have a little uncertainty about the filter program, but we think that we have funding available. Even if we fund all of these projects, we believe we'd have funding available to supplement those filter programs as well. And so we wanted to bring these to you tonight. I know it's a very short presentation. We just basically want to know, I think on the next slide, is if the community is supportive of us moving forward and funding these projects with the money we have available from the state through the AB 617 program. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or hear your feedback on that mix of projects.
Thank you, Kathy. I didn't see, maybe I missed it. Lauren, were you able to put in the chat box the one-pager? Apologize if I missed it. I'm having trouble pulling that up on the chat on my end.
I can link to it. It's in the meeting materials on our website.
Good.
And just for everyone's notification, we're talking with you all today. We'll be talking with the Portside Steering Committee next week as well about this mix of funding. I see Jose has his hand up.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have a question on the charging stations. What do you mean by a charging station? And I see that you have 2 locations for the international border station area. Mm-hmm. Have you identified locations for those stations, for these stations?
I'll start with your first question first about what the charging stations, the infrastructure is. For these projects, it's building a place like a parking lot plus the electrical infrastructure and the chargers so that people can plug in trucks for the most part in this project. So many of you have seen EV chargers kind of in supermarket parking lots or in the community where if you have a passenger vehicle, you can come and you can plug in that vehicle. In this program, we're looking at larger, like a giant version of those chargers that are available and fast to fill up bigger trucks and be able to use bigger electric vehicles in the community. Does that answer your first question?
Yes. And how many chargers will you have per station?
I don't have the details on that right now. It depends on, there's a variety of, as you can see, I think we have 4, 5, 6, 7 different infrastructure projects that have applied for funding. And so they range from small charging arrays that are supporting one company's fleet to larger public kind of truck stop sort of charging availability.
And actually, that's what's going to be a follow-up question. Are these stations going to be open to anybody who would like to charge their truck, or are they just going to be for a specific like warehouse or depot?
As I mentioned, there's a mixture. Some of them are specific to particular fleets or particular businesses. Others are intended to be open to the public. So we have we have a good variety of those projects this year because we know that there's different sorts of charging work for different kinds of company and different kinds of truck drivers. Small fleets, small truck owners need public charging. Large fleets need guaranteed on-site charging at their facilities. And Jose, remind me of your other question. Sorry.
What was the second question?
It was about locations.
Oh, the location. Yeah, the location.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad it's not just me.
No, thank you.
We don't select the locations. Those locations are dependent on the application. So someone comes to us and says, I would like to build charging infrastructure in this location, and that's part of their application. So it's not like we don't go out and look for empty land and create projects from APCD. We accept applications for folks who want to build those projects for themselves.
Okay. And are you coordinating with San Diego Gas and Electric to make sure that there's power for this location? Yeah.
As part of the application, we do ask people if they've worked with San Diego Gas and Electric to make sure there's power available. My understanding is for these projects, they have done that homework. We don't work, the Air District doesn't work directly with SDG&E on that, but we expect that our applicants, when they get to the stage where they're asking for funding, have done that homework and know that the power is available. Some of them, I will say, getting to that point, some of them incorporate solar and potentially battery storage to help offset those supply issues with SDG&E. We know electricity costs a lot in those peak hours, and for those charging stations to make sense and be able to provide power at a cost that's affordable, particularly for those small trucking companies, they need to be able to not have to purchase power at those peak rates, but store it when energy is not as expensive and make it available to those equipment owners. Did that answer your question, hopefully?
Yes, thank you. Do you, what about hydrogen stations? Do you receive, you didn't get any applications for that?
We did not receive any
Okay.
application for hydrogen stations. We would be willing to consider one if someone wanted to submit one, but we did not receive any this year.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions or comments? Are you guys good with the idea of using this funding to help zero emission trucks? Alejandro.
It's just a question that popped into my mind. Do
Sure.
the businesses that like this business that's getting $10 million for 2 heavy duty charging stations, do they get any like regulations or standards that they have to adhere for them to basically, you know, not like price gouge this thing into being inexpensive down the line? Or is it just basically like an incentive with no strings attached for long term?
There are some, we're government, so there's some strings attached always. But there's not anything in our contract that talks about pricing on that. We expect, much like these are kind of first out of the gate, but much maybe gas stations are not the best example because gas is expensive too. But that as we see more competition in that space, we expect that people won't be able to charge outrageous amounts for the charging that they're providing, at least to the public. But we do the controls that we have in the APCD grant programs. We do talk about these folks need to be in compliance with all of the applicable state and federal regulations around these projects, and that includes using what the certification is EVITP, which are electric vehicle infrastructure EVI certification program, to make sure that the stations are installed in accordance with all of the appropriate standards and regulations that are around them. And then they have to keep them up and running for at least 3 years. We expect a lot longer than that, but we ask them to report how much electricity they provide over those 3 years.
Do we know the total? Is this like a partial covering? Do the $10 million to total, or
that's a good question. We never pay 100% for these large projects. Each of the projects, depending on what they're including with the projects and where they're located, we can fund between 50 and 80% of the projects. I will tell you that for most of these, we are not funding that high a percentage. These are very expensive stations to put in. And so we've capped our contribution at $5 million a site. Most of the projects that we saw were well over that. So we're definitely not paying all of the cost of these charging stations.
Thank you.
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. Do we have any other questions, concerns? Cheerleading?
Sorry, was this type of incentive funding specifically for trucks, or?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time? I missed it.
Sorry, like what we're talking about, is it specifically a program just for the trucks, or are we talking about any kind of incentive program through AB 617 through our SERP?
This funding is eligible for any kind of project in the SERP that's eligible through the guidelines. The applications that you're seeing on the fact sheet are the applications that we received. So if there are other projects in the community, we're talking about this both with this committee and with Portside, that if there are other kinds of project that the community is very really wants to see, we want to work with you to try and find who those applicants would be, so that we can work with them to make sure that they submit an application, that they've figured out how we can help move their projects forward. But our program is dependent on folks applying for the money. And so we're happy to help with that, but we need willing partners to help us spend those dollars in these communities.
In that conversation, we're going to have a more in-depth, like kind of workshop strategy conversation at the next CSC meeting, not only here at International Border, but also Portside as well, about like how, what are those particular opportunities in the SERP that are most priority, right? And then who are the potential partners that we can then do that intentional outreach and engagement to encourage to apply for AB 617 funds. So more certainly to come on that. Yeah, go ahead, Alejandro.
I was just gonna say that, yeah, like obviously the transition into EV infrastructure specifically for heavy duty trucks is important. But personally, like I would like to see prioritize like any kind of work with the school district to put filtration system in the schools. I know we've discussed that in the past, and I know that it's also gonna require a lot of work from the school district to like get on board and with the applications and the actual implementation of it. But I would like to see those being prioritized, those kind of projects being prioritized over a private business.
Yeah, Alejandro, I think if we'd received applications for those kind of projects, we would be happy to prioritize those in the funding. We just haven't been able to get anybody to be motivated enough to ask for the money.
Got it. We'll talk to some people.
Great. Thank you.
Kathy, I do see a comment or a question from Jenny in the chat box. She asked, could businesses apply to have electricity and security barriers set up to host air hydrogen sulfide monitors in the community? So using these AB 617 funds.
That's a good question. The funds are really trying to focus on emission reduction or community protection projects. If that was a big priority for the community, we could talk to CARB about perhaps creating a community identified project to help facilitate maybe using some of these incentive funding for that. I can't speak for CARB, so I don't know how they would feel about that, but it's certainly something we'd be willing to consider if that was something that the community wanted to prioritize.
Are there any last questions or comments for Kathy? So we'll definitely be seeing more of Kathy in this space, and then also others on her team as well that will be working on this more closely. So thank you so much, Kathy. Yeah, we'll keep folks posted as these projects move along too, and go through the contract to receive funding as well. So thank you, Kathy.
Yeah. Oh, thank you all. I really appreciate the conversation. Thanks.
So at this time, just wanted to open it up to general public comments for items that weren't previously discussed on the agenda. Folks have any public comment that they'd like to share as well, or community updates as well? And then I don't see any hands or anyone come off mute. So just want to turn it to Domingo if there's any closing statements, but before we head out, and then I could share with folks the date of the next meeting.
Thank you, Shalem. Just thanking everybody for their continuous engagement and collaboration with us, and also to share that we will continue to provide information as we move along in our efforts with bringing more data regarding the hydrogen sulfide levels in the Tijuana River Valley and surrounding communities. So we thank you all for also your help in helping us get the word out with your neighbors, with your community partners, in your communities, because this is something that we are hoping to get out to as many people as possible. So thank you again for your partnership, for your continued engagement, and for being in the meeting with us today.
Yeah, and just to reiterate Domingo's thanks, we want to certainly always do a better job in communicating out to the community. And so if there are any organizations that any folks belong to that like to be included in our listserv, like if there's any odor advisories, we want to make sure that you're the first to know. We want to work with you all. We know that we could do a better job in communication, and we're striving for that. Actually, David on our team this week is actually working on compiling a list of community partners in the Tijuana River Valley that we can make sure that receive notification on up-to-date information regarding the Tijuana River Valley. So please let us know. We'd love to partner with you all, and we're committed to doing a better job in communicating and sharing information with you all. As I mentioned, the Tijuana River Valley will be probably just a standing item, right? In this space, given the urgency and the need for that continual line of communication. So we'll be providing updates continually in this space as well. But also, if you have any questions between now and then, feel free to email us directly as well, and or give us a call. We'd happy to connect and have conversations also outside of the space. Speaking of our next meeting is going to be on October 16th. And that meeting will also be taking place virtually. So you'll see an email from us with more information on that as we get closer to that date. And then our November meeting, I believe, will be in person. So next meeting, October 16th, which will be virtual via Zoom. Thank you, everyone. Want to wish you a good night. We're going to have our presentation slide deck up on our website by tomorrow, and hopefully have a recording of this presentation as well on our website as well. But we'll be sure to also email that out to folks who attended tonight and those who are on our listserv as well, in case there's information you want to go back to, or if there was someone who wasn't here this evening, making sure that they have access to this information that we shared as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night. And please know that our email, our phones are always open to you all to connect between now and the next time. Oh, I see Bruce. Yes.
Hi, sorry, I had trouble with my mic and my hand, and I know Kathy was kind of talking on the question regarding setting up electricity security barriers to host air hydrogen sulfide monitors in the community. Yes, one potential pathway is the community identified project plan through the CAP incentives guidelines. There's another actual potential pathway worth exploring. It wouldn't necessarily be through businesses, but through nonprofit organizations or IRS 501c3 tax exempted nonprofit organizations that could apply for community air grants right now that is open for solicitation. That the applications to apply would be, the deadline is November 1st, so it is upcoming. But I do know that monitoring is part of eligible projects under that, and that might be a potential avenue. I believe it's almost $16 million available for potential projects. So I do want to highlight that for consideration, and I'll put a link to it in the chat.
Thank you, Cruz, for sharing that. Appreciate that. All right, everyone, have a wonderful evening, and we will be in touch. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Gracias, buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Adiós.
Buenas.